This segment of the Alice Stewart Show is brought to you by Aero Plumbing. For all your household or business plumbing needs, call Aero Plumbing at 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.
7:34. Young Guns, my favorite segment of the week, and this is going to be awesome. We have the former president of the College Democrats in Arkansas. He started College Democrats in Arkansas. Josh Blevins, former Young Democrat of Arkansas, also president and chairman of Blevins Investment Group. And on the Republican side, Dylan Haney. He is the former Arkansas College Republican chairman. So we have the two-party college party chairman presidents dueling it out. Josh and Dylan, great to have you here.
Good to have you here, or good to be here.
Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, well, we're gonna just jump in with both feet. We're gonna talk foreign policy, national security, because that's really what's dominating a lot of the conversation in Washington, and it is this ISIS, the Islamic State, and as you guys both know, once the ISIS have been infiltrating the region over there in Syria, and it's taken on a new level of significance after the beheading of two American journalists, as well as the head of a British aid worker. And now the administration has said, yes, they are dangerous. We need to defeat and destroy them. Secretary of State John Kerry yesterday spoke in Washington at a Senate hearing, and he agreed they are stepping it up in dealing with ISIS.
ISIL must be defeated. Period. End of story. And collectively, we are all going to be measured by how we carry out this mission.
Josh, your thoughts. I mean, a while back they were JV. Now they are, the president came along and said, okay, we can manage them. Now they have recognized it's time to destroy, period, end of discussion. Your thoughts on their transition?
Well, these things change on the international stage. There was a time when the United States was JV too, and we've certainly come a long way. It's taken us a little longer than it has ISIL, but we've certainly come a long way when it comes to power and influence on the world stage. ISIL is absolutely the greatest threat to the security of the United States at the present moment. They are a bunch of violent, armed thugs. There is no way to avoid their wrath other than to defeat and isolate them. So it's absolutely important that we get Congress on board. The Secretary, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, have spent quite a bit of time on Capitol Hill in recent days, trying to make sure that that's what happens.
Dylan?
Sure. Well, I think that we can all agree that ISIS poses and really has posed an imminent and very dangerous threat to the nation and our allies around the globe. But I do think that it is ultimately President Obama's failed leadership that has put us in this difficult situation strategically, seeing as he has changed his mind several times about what our overall goal would be, the severity of ISIS and what they were doing, and as we've seen over the last few days, how it would happen from a strategic standpoint. Alice, we do know that Congress passed the continuing appropriation resolution yesterday with an amendment that would support the Syrian rebels through training and arming who are fighting against the forces. And this was a good step, and that many have agreed upon on both sides of the aisle, but working to empower the allied forces in the region to fight the Islamic State. But I think that ultimately it will probably require more. But we are having this conversation to begin with because the White House from the outset has not had a clear plan of action on how to deal with the threat that has increased in severity as we've seen over time. And
you're right, the House did pass providing training for Syrian rebels. Key is making sure they don't get in the hands of jihadists. Members of the Senate will vote on that today. The key, though, moving forward, as many will agree, and Secretary of State Kerry mentioned yesterday, is that the U.S. cannot and will not and must not go it alone. And it needs to include a broad coalition of those also in the region. Here's Secretary of State John Kerry.
We know that a sustainable strategy is not U.S. ground forces. It is enabling local forces to do what they have to do for themselves and for their country.
And also, that's the key, is making sure that we bring in other nations in part of this broad coalition. Dylan, how likely do you see that being? He was asked about this many times. Who has committed to putting ground troops on the ground? And he wouldn't give any names. But Dylan, how successful do you see that being in developing the coalition?
Right. Well, from what I've read, I haven't seen that any have committed to putting ground forces there. But I think that it's important to empower the regional groups there that want to oppose ISIS. I think that is a good first step, like I said, but I think it will probably end up requiring more than that. But I do think that's a very good thing to empower those individuals and the regional groups there that want to fight back against the Islamic State. And I hope that it's successful inside of the president, but I think it's probably going to require more. Josh?
That's why this effort has taken so long to mobilize. It'd be nice if we could say, hey, the president should have said a long time ago, hey, we're going to go and defeat ISIS. But that's exactly what you don't want to do. What you want to do is work, behind the scenes and try to establish an international coalition that can take a lot of the heavy lifting off of the United States. That's something that Americans say we want to have happen. That we want the U.S. to have to shoulder less of the world's burdens, and that's exactly what the president has done here. We're working with regional powers. We're hopefully working with Iraq and Syria and the UAE, Saudi Arabia, to try to get them to do some of the ground fighting. And there's not much appetite in the United States for any kind of a ground war, and it's entirely appropriate. I think that's a correct sentiment amongst the American people. And that's what the president has been working to achieve.
Florida Senator Republican Marco Rubio weighed in on this, and he says that as things move forward, depending on how this plays out, the United States may not have much choice but to increase the combat role.
Ideally, in a perfect world, they would be local ground troops. They would be Sunnis and taking back their villages. They would be Iraqi armed elements. There would be Syrian rebels who are moderate and equipped. We have to be prepared, however, for the reality that may not come together in time.
Josh?
I think that Marco Rubio is being a little typically reactionary here. Martin Dempsey, they kind of said, aha, you're committing to ground troops in Iraq when he was speaking to Congress about potential role for U.S. ground forces. But what he was saying is, listen, we're dead set against any kind of real combat force in Iraq. Now, should the unspeakable arise and we have to send some folks in, he wouldn't. He would advise the president thusly, but our civilian leaders, the president has said that's not something that we're interested in.
Dylan?
Yeah, well, I certainly think that Senator Rubio is onto something here. I agree with him in the sense that we have to empower these groups as we can, but that we have to have a contingency plan just in case that doesn't fix the issue completely. And I will say that there's kind of been some back and forth, even at the White House. They've tried to streamline their message to where it was, we will not have, as President Obama has repeated several times, we will not have boots on the ground. And then you do have Dempsey coming out and kind of saying something a little bit contradictory to that, and then, them having to backtrack a little bit. So the message is kind of muddled from the White House. So I'm not sure if they're even certain of whether or not this strategy can fully, eradicate ISIS and the threat that it poses to allies around the world.
All right, we're going to wrap that up. We're going to take a break and come back with our young guns, Josh Blevins and Dylan Haney. We're going to talk about the NFL and just plagued with child abuse stories and domestic abuse, and are they handling this the proper way? And are folks realizing enough is enough? We'll talk about that coming up after this on the Alice Stewart Show. This segment of the program brought to you by Aero Plumbing for all of your household or business plumbing needs. Call Aero Plumbing 1-866-PLUMBER or schedule an appointment online at aeroplumbing.net.